Yeah, good afternoon or good evening to all the students. You will see that there are quite a few parallels between Tade's lecture and my lecture. I'm happy to meet all of you. I wish I could be there physically, but online should also work well. I have just visited your beautiful country of Slovenia about 6 weeks ago. I loved it and I hope to be back sometime soon. So today I'd like to talk about socially responsible tourism. Last week Tade was talking about, you could say, more or less the same subject, and he departed from the Ubuntu philosophy, how to do business on the pillars of Ubuntu. Now, my philosophy is very much like Ubuntu. It just has a different name. I call it customer friendliness. I wrote a book about customer friendliness because, of course, you've heard of customer care, customer service, but I think customer friendliness is all of that and more. The more is the human touch. If you say customer friendliness, you already visualize a smiling human being. And it is much more than just a smile. It is everything that I'm going to talk about in the next 45 minutes, plus more. It should come from the heart, from a good intention, from the right purpose. And that is also what Tade was talking about. Now, first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. So my name is Jeannette Biesbroeck. I live in the Netherlands. I was born in the Netherlands, and I have traveled pretty much all over the world. And at the moment, I'm sitting at home in the Netherlands. I would like to give you a short introduction so that you see of myself, so that you see where I built up my expertise. And this may also give you some ideas for your future jobs. I think some of you may already be working in tourism, but you can also always pick up some more ideas. Now, I started my career in tourism exactly 40 years ago, 40 years ago. That was in 1982, and now we are in 2022. Of course, a lot of changes have taken place in every possible sector, but I would say, especially in tourism, it was so fascinating to see all the changes. Here, the upper left picture, that is not me, but it is, this lady was always posing for the pictures for all the PR communication. I was wearing the same uniform and I had the same briefcase, so in general it was the same kind of a picture. You see this lady here in the Dutch bulb fields, but my job was to be in Spain on the Costa Dorada as a local representative for Holland International. I loved it. I was young, I was still a student. I did this during my very long summer break from university. I did not study tourism, I studied languages in Brussels. And well, that was my first acquaintance with a job in tourism. I loved it. So I had to care for the Dutch tourists that flew to the Costa Dorada in Spain to have a sunny holiday. And I really had no idea what to do, but pretty soon it became clear to me I just had to be there for the customers whenever they needed me. And I had to show them the way, I had to make some recommendations for restaurants, for excursions, and I could say I was soon thrown into the deep because already in my first week I had some emergencies that I needed to deal with. And I was amazed at my own actions. I thought, I'm so young and somehow I know what to do in case of emergency. And then I thought this might be my career in tourism. And I remember Tade was talking about finding your purpose in his lecture last week. Well, I was not trying to find my purpose yet. I just wanted to have a nice time there and I wanted to complete my studies. But then I slowly began to think this might be my purpose, being there for other people with all my heart when they need me. After I graduated in Brussels from this language school, the next day after my graduation, I found a job with Globus. At the time it was called Globus Gateway. And I was hired to conduct bus tours all over Europe, really all over Europe. I went to Russia, to Spain, to Greece, and all the countries in between. And our passengers were mainly Americans, some of them Australians, Canadians, New Zealanders. But of course, the language was English, and off we went to see Europe in 12 days, 14 days, sometimes 30, 32 days. And I did this for 22 years. I must have loved it. Well, I did, yes, I loved it. But after about 20 years, I thought, well, it would be nice if I could find something else. And then the something else came, because the same company that I was working for established a cruise line, Avalon Waterways. So the umbrella company was called Globus family of brands. One branch was Globus Bus Tours and another branch was Avalon Waterways. We cruised on the European rivers. Same thing what Tadej did, but he worked for a different company, very similar though. So I jumped from the buses to the ships, and that was a very nice move, because on a rather big ship with 155 passengers, and a captain, and a hotel manager, and a bar manager, and a housekeeping manager, and a chief engineer, and a lot of suppliers on land, you learn how to do business. You know how to care for not only for your customers, but also for your suppliers and for your co-workers. So that was a very educating experience for me, to jump from the rather small bus to the much bigger ships. I was on the ships for 12 years, and I really, really loved it. In winter, I had time off from the ships, and something else came to my mind. I also wanted to be a wedding planner, because it is kind of the same, you organize, you have to be there for your people, very similar to being on bus tours or cruises. So I set up my own wedding planners agency, and that existed for about 10 years. Well, let's say until COVID stopped all of that. Then, while I was still on the ships, I joined a non-profit organization in the Netherlands called PUM, Senior Experts, and I worked for them as a volunteer during my off time in winter. And that really broadened my horizons, because for PUM, I would be sent to developing countries, mostly in Africa, in my case, and Asia, but PUM also has projects in South America. I loved it so much. So I still do it, but now we can't travel because of COVID-19. But in those developing countries, I could see how people found easy solutions for problems that we make bigger, because we don't think of the easier solutions anymore. So I learned a lot from the people there, and hopefully they learned a lot from me. I was sent to hotels where I was to train all the staff and sometimes also the management, so that they would attract more hotel guests and therefore create more jobs. It is a way to fight poverty. And indeed, sometimes I could see that the business was doing better after the training, and they could hire more people from the same village. And then, after about 40 years in the business, I thought it's time to write down my ideas about tourism, about doing business, about being there for your customers, and I wrote a book on customer friendliness. I can only say that was thanks to COVID, because I could take my time in the lockdown, and took me a year to compose the whole book, so to say. Okay, that is a brief introduction to 40 years of tourism. Oh, excuse me. I have seen a lot of changes. So how did I see tourism change? I could say in general, between 1980 until the year 2000, so the last 2 decades of the previous century, there was a lot of mass tourism, which involves a lot of consumption and overconsumption. There was no awareness yet of socially responsible tourism, of making connections, of being sustainable. People just had not heard of it, and nobody had invented it, so to say. So most people just hopped on a plane and hopped off a plane as soon as they were in a sunny country. They enjoyed 2 weeks of sunbathing and eating, preferably at a restaurant that was owned by people from their own country, so that they could speak their own language. They often forget to pick up their own waste from the beach. You know, they left the plastic bottles and everything there, because after all, the local people were there to clean it up. People didn't know yet. Around the year 2000, this was slowly changing. There was talk about pollution, jammed rivers, in the case of river cruises. I remember having a meeting with the port master of Vienna. Vienna is one of the larger ports on the European waterways. And I think this meeting took place in 2008. And he said to me, in 2012, the rivers will be jammed, and there will be no more space to dock in the ports. And I thought, how can that be? How can we continue? Of course, the company that I worked for wanted to grow and wanted to continue. But of course, you know, other solutions were found. Ships would dock in less known villages, towns, which was very nice, actually. But of course, if you want to sell, you need to advertise cities like Vienna in your brochure. And the cities were often overcrowded, like Venice, Florence, Amsterdam, some really bad examples. So nobody really knew where it was going, because in my own country, in Amsterdam, the Amsterdammers were complaining bitterly. They said, our city is overcrowded. We don't want that anymore. Yes, we want the money from the tourists, but we don't want all those people day in, day out in our city, because it is our city and we don't recognize our city anymore. But nobody had a solution to it. Then, I will come back to that later on, of course. There was a need and demand for off-the-beaten-track tours. People still wanted to see Vienna, Paris, Amsterdam, Venice, but people that had been to those well-known places, they wanted to go off the beaten track. So that was the beginning of tailor-made tours and more adventurous tours and smaller groups, so that you could go you know, to Kenya, to Tanzania, whatever, to go really off the beaten track, and also in Europe to explore the less known places. As a result of this, the tourists also wanted to connect with the locals that they would meet off the beaten track, away from mass tourism. And they began to have an eye for who lives here. What is the culture of those people? How do children go to school? For how many years? What do they learn there? How do people spend their daily life? This became very interesting for the first-time tourists in such a country. So there was a demand for it, and of course, if there is a demand for it, then you offer such tours. And then the tourists understood, and of course the tour operators, that it would be good to support the local economies, because the local people would receive all those tourists, and then it would be nice to also support the local economy. You eat at a restaurant that is owned by the local people. You buy handicrafts made by local people, and so on and so forth. So sustainability became the key word. Today, everybody has heard of it. Everybody tries to think of it, but it is a relatively new thing. Low emission means of transportation, banning single-use plastic, and digital instead of paper travel documents and travel guides. And of course, you have all seen that today there is no restaurant, no hotel anymore, I think, with papers. Everything is digitally communicated, and that is because of COVID that accelerated this development. And there's the word, COVID-19. It brought the big changes that were already in the pipeline. So people said sometimes when I would train them in the developing countries, yeah, sustainability, you talk about it, but you know, we have so many concerns, we need to make a living. We will put that off till later, banning plastics and papers and other aspects of sustainability. But then, because of COVID, there was no time to waste anymore. People had to change because the whole world changed and accelerated this new thinking of sustainability and social responsibility. Suddenly, there was no more international tourism. The usually overcrowded cities looked like a dream. I've seen it in Amsterdam, beautiful. It looked like a 19th century picture without all the tourists. But the tourism industry needed to go forward. So a quick change needed to be made. And they changed, the tour operators changed to domestic tourism. I'm sure you see the same in your own country. There is a lot of domestic tourism, but at least it is promoted because the people in the tourism industry need to make their money. More adventurous and more sustainable domestic tourism than in the past. In the past, until the 1970s, we also had domestic tourism. So we could learn again from the past, where would people go and what is there to do. But these days, people want more adventure. And you can always think of something adventurous, bungee jumping, eating on top of a crane, whatever. You just need to be creative. Flex bookings, also a new thing. In the past, you had to book your flight or your hotel well in advance, or a tour or cruise, no refunds. But now all these providers have to be flexible because you don't know the last minute, can you go, or do you need to stay in quarantine, and so on and so forth. There's also more focus on hygiene now at hotels, on flights, etc., which is a bonus. I remember training hotel staff on hygiene, and they often thought it was good enough, but today nobody will think it's good enough anymore. There is a lot of focus on it, so I would think that is a bonus. Socially responsible tourism. Now, if you have a mission in whatever job you have in tourism, you have a mission to be socially responsible, which involves, of course, customer friendliness and sustainability. Then you need to create a clear mission and a vision, which I will come to a little bit later. So socially responsible tourism means that the traveler use their tourism dollars, both directly and indirectly, as a tool for conservation, poverty alleviation, and economic support. Responsible travelers respect local people and the local environment in each place they visit. Responsible tour operators facilitate this and don't compromise on their mission and vision. So your customers, of course, are part of your mission and vision, and so are your suppliers. But you need to have a clear mission before you can do all of this. Once you have created a clear mission, you look at your vision statements, and that is what is needed for your socially responsible tourism mission. You need to keep a good eye on your supply chain management, because you can have all the good ideas, but all the people that you work with need to be on the same line. So internal and external engagement, clear communication, and respect for everyone you work with. Training. You need to train your suppliers, your team, your own management on your mission. If you hire an external bureau to train your staff, then it's a good idea to first really explain to that bureau what your mission is in every detail. Quality control, because you want to be sure that everybody executes this mission in the right way. Certification. For example, on bus tours, on cruises, you hire local guides on land, and if after you have trained them on your mission, you can give them a certificate, and if the customers want to be sure that all your suppliers are standing behind the same mission, then they look for a certain certification. Then, of course, leadership dedicated to the SRT mission. Because if there's no strong leadership with a good vision on the mission, I'd say, then it won't work. The leaders need to coach the staff at all times. And then you stress and share all of the above as a unique selling point to the public. And I can tell you, more and more tourists, they look for certification, they look for a clear mission, they look for sustainability, and they are happy to know that you as a tour operator or a travel agent, that you are good for all your people, the people that work for you directly, and the people in the local communities that are visited. How does it look? Picture-wise, from mass tourism to awareness. On the first picture, you see a bridge in Venice. I think that many of you may have been there. I think that after COVID-19, it might be the same again, but this is a picture of mass tourism where you can only move with the crowd. The second picture is a beach in Spain, but that is an old picture. That is like 30 years ago, because the beaches in Spain no longer look like this. It's much more spread out. People don't want this anymore. The third picture, that is in Florence. It is often overcrowded, but also people don't really want this anymore, that you can only move with the flow. So I wonder what it's going to look like when we can travel again. And then the upper right picture is a very, very polluted beach somewhere. I've seen so many of those beaches in Africa, sadly. And people also look at that, if they book a tour, they look at pictures, and of course they don't want to see such a polluted beach. So tourism declares there's climate emergency. There is focus on the plastic soup, as on this picture on the beach. This happens to be a Dutch organization. I wasn't even aware of it, that it is a Dutch organization, but they do a lot to fight the plastic soup and to create awareness. For example, they give advice to the cosmetics industry of how to produce plastic-free cosmetics, because there are these micro beads in many of the cosmetics, and they want to fight that kind of industry. Now, future-proof means of transportation. So if you ask yourself, what can you do in your business, in tourism? Well, focus on future-proof means of transportation. Look at this picture of a cruise liner. So much emission. And when you see that picture, you think, yeah, do I really want that? No. There is now a quick change towards green ships. It goes very fast. A lot of research has been done. And I think that within 5 years, most of the cruise liners will be, I can't say emission-free, but with very low emission. A lot is being done on that, which means that if you have a cruise line that is still like on this old picture, people may not book with you anymore. Same for airlines. There is a lot of discussion about that. And there are some promising projects for the future. This is a V-plane. It is constructed at the Delft Polytechnics in the Netherlands, but I'm sure that in other countries, same projects are being undertaken. This V shape stands for less emission, because it consumes less fuel. There have also been tryouts with electric airplanes, but that is still too difficult. You can't fly across the ocean on a battery, of course. And here's a picture of an old motor coach. When I started on the bus tours, the motor coaches were no longer like that, but I would say in the 1970s they had this one, which was very polluting, and now you see a lot of electric buses. These are all things that you can pay attention to if you want to be a good entrepreneur in tourism, or whatever job you have, you are part of the mission. And then the big winner, bicycles. Bicycle tours are very popular in my country, in the Netherlands, but all over the world. You see an increased popularity of bicycle tourism. And I also notice that in many, many countries, the governments are investing in laying out more bicycle tracks so that people can safely go on a bicycle tour. It is a beautiful way to see a country, an area. Of course, it's completely emission-free. It keeps you fit. You do connect with the local people. You have to connect with the local people. And it's a beautiful way of exploring the not beaten tracks and getting to know the local culture. Of course, you have to make sure that the bicycles are good quality, that it's safe, that people wear a helmet, that they get good guidance. In Amsterdam, we have for the cruise ships, we have created a very nice bicycle tour with a guide. Of course, you can also set up tours without a guide, but we do it with a guide. We stop sometimes at people's homes for coffee and Dutch apple cake, or we stop at a tiny little cafe where we have Dutch coffee and Dutch sweets, everything to connect with the local people. And in every country you can think of something. So that is the big winner for future-proof tourism. And then caring for wildlife. Now this picture on the left, that is me hugging an elephant. Today, I would be ashamed to do so. I didn't know yet, and this is only a few years ago in Thailand. I thought, well, I want to go to a farm where the elephants are treated well. So I had done some research, but today I wouldn't do this anymore because elephants belong in here, like on the picture on the right. They belong where they belong. That's the way to say it, and not in a kind of a small zoo. So it's nice to go to Africa and look at the elephants and all the other wildlife, but elephants are not born to be hugged by the tourists. And of course, riding an elephant, that is not done anymore at all. A lot of this discussion has been about this. Less plastic, less paperwork. That is also an important point of attention. And I see a remark coming in from Natalie that this was a very quick change. Yes, only a few years ago, people thought it was fun to hug elephants and ride elephants, but that was a very quick and good change. Same, I would say, with plastic and paperwork. Now, this picture on the left is a picture of the Vondelpark in Amsterdam at the end of a day full of tourists. People just dumped their plastic cups, their plastic bottles, and there is a big demand for the ban of single-use plastic. So if you sell a person a trip to Amsterdam, for example, you could give this client a gift like a reusable water bottle with Amsterdam on it, and then of course your own company name on it. On the cruise ships, we also changed maybe 5 years ago from the single-use water bottles. We use them in high quantities. I just cannot imagine anymore. We changed to these single-use bottles. At the beginning of the cruise, each passenger was given a water bottle with, of course, the logo of the cruise line on it. And we had water containers throughout the ship where people could refill their bottles. Also, every day, we would put a daily newsletter on the bed of each passenger, and we would print out much more. Sometimes it was 7 sheets of paper per cabin, per day. Some information on the local town, on the excursions they could book for the next day, information on the entertainment on board, and a map of the town. We would print that 7 times so many passengers. Such a waste of ink and paper. And nowadays everything is digital and there is no way back. And what you see here on the last picture is a lady with a cell phone in her hand. And this is something that Tadej also mentioned last week, that today the cruise lines and many bus tours also, they have this app. Whenever you go out on your own, you switch to the app on your phone. You can see what time you need to be back on board. You have a map of the city on your app, and you also have all the excursions and even the dinner menu on your app. No child labor is another very important point of attention if you want to be socially responsible. Of course, here in Europe, we know that we don't want to see child labor and we have good laws against child labor. But when you go to countries like India or African countries and you see child labor, then you want to make sure that no children are working for your product. So this is again the supply chain. Make sure that people that are working for you in other countries do not get involved in child labor. Of course, child labor is cheap, but you pay the difference to have socially responsible products. So we don't want to see children at work, certainly not this very heavy work. We want to see children going to school. This is me visiting a school in Cambodia. I was on an Avalon cruise in Cambodia, and we supported this school. That is another aspect of being socially responsible. You can support a school with your cruise line, with your tours, your bus tours, and the passengers like to visit schools or maybe vocational training schools, and they are willing to donate money for books, whatever, or they bring some books and pen and paper, whatever is needed. And these children were so lovely, so enthusiastic, very, very willing to learn, because they knew they could not take it for granted that they had education. Gender equality, another point of attention. We talk about it in our own countries, but in this case I was in Africa training hotel staff, and we were talking about gender equality. What you see here is me on a picture with those ladies that worked at the hotel. I said, I'm here to empower you. And they were so happy. I asked each one, why are you in this job? These were all in the housekeeping. Beautiful stories came out of it. And most of them said, I'm so happy and proud to work here at a nice hotel, because I'm so proud that I can support my own family, and maybe my children can go to university later on. And that's why I want to have extra training, because then I really know that my children will have a better future than we do. So those ladies were ready to be empowered, and they were very, very willing to learn. As long as you provide training, it will all be good and better. Connecting with people, community-based tourism. So when you go off the beaten track or even on the beaten track, you can organize homestays, not staying overnight, but well, you can stay overnight with people at Airbnb, of course. But what we used to do on the cruise ships, we took the people to dinner with local families. On an average, 6 passengers per family. And that was, that guaranteed beautiful connections, beautiful stories. Sometimes people came back to the ship in tears. They said there was such bonding, such connection. They would sometimes stay in touch with such a family. So home-hosted dinners, arts, crafts and cooking workshops, school support, interaction. And that is giving back, which is very, very different from mass tourism from the 1970s onwards. The tourists like this much better because it gives them something for life, and the local people, of course, they thrive on it. Make it your unique selling point. And I've put an example. Now it is a bit hidden by the picture, but it is www.intrepidtravel.com. That is just an example of a company in the English language that takes you to off the beaten track, small communities where you can really connect with the people. Providing training, I already said, is to fight poverty. It creates jobs. So this organization that I work for, we provide training in developing countries. This is me in Tanzania. And again, I always learn so much from those people, and they learn from me. So it's a beautiful way of engaging with people in other countries. Help them and they help us. Certification, this is one of the many certificates that you may be looking for when you book your next vacation. Travel Life. Travel Life is a really good one. If you stay at a hotel that has Travel Life certificates, you can almost be sure that it's very sustainable and that they treat their team well. Engagement and thank you, Tade, for posting that in intrepidtravel.com. Engagement and commitment, I already mentioned it, but here you can visualize it. Here is you and your business. You need to connect with your mission, have a really good definition of your mission and your vision and yourself. If you don't connect with yourself, what you really believe in, what you stand for, then you can never create your own brand. Remember that from Tade's lecture. Create your own brand by really knowing what you want and what you stand for. You connect with local communities where you sell your product. You connect, of course, with your customers. You involve them in your mission and your suppliers. You train your suppliers on your mission, and you make your mission your unique selling point, that is creating your brand, and then your customers will grow into your mission. They will book with you because they like your mission, they believe in it, and they will look for it next time, or maybe for a similar company with a similar mission. But a lot of customers will come back to you if they see how you live your mission through your vision. Very important. Engagement and commitment. You tell your customers that you are fully committed to your mission. Remember, all of your customers are partners in your mission. And Tade is kindly posting what the meaning is of PUM Senior Experts. Thank you, Tade. PUM means Programma Uitzending Managers. That is a Dutch word, and that translates into deployment of managers. In this case, senior managers. So all of us, the volunteers, have at least 30 years of experience in our sector. In my case, I work for the hospitality and tourism sector. And so it means Program Deployment Manager. The P stands for program, sorry. But today we just say PUM Senior Experts. We no longer use PUM as an abbreviation. You can look it up, pum.nl. It's also in English. I would like to thank you for your attention. Of course, I welcome all your questions. I'm still here and I have my eye on the chat. I have some final thoughts for you. Follow your dreams. That's what I have always done. And that's how you find your purpose and your mission sooner or later. Stay true to yourself and to your mission. It will benefit you, your business, and the world. And will make you a happy person. After 40 years in tourism, I can say it was not always easy. It was often very beautiful, but it made me a better and happier person because I had a purpose and a mission, and I still have, still working on it. Now, if you want to read my story of customer friendliness and responsible entrepreneurship with examples from my work in tourism, you can order my book, How Customer Friendly Am I Really? And next month, an updated version comes out. So you may want to wait till next month. If you can't wait, then you order it today. And I've been looking into offering you a discount. I would love to do that, but unfortunately it's not possible because it's all computerized through the editor. and he cannot build in a discount code. I must say, though, that the price is already pretty low, 14.95 euros, plus, of course, the cost for shipping it. And the margin on it is very, very minimal, because the cost of paper went up. Another aspect of sustainability, you know, too many trees need to be offered for this book. Yeah, I am aware of that. So maybe in the future an ebook, but for the moment I have this book, and it is illustrated with stories from my 40 years in tourism. So again, thank you so much for your attention. I wish you well in your careers, and now I welcome your questions. Let's see if there are any questions or remarks. What is the most important thing that you have learned in working in tourism? That question came from Sabine. Thank you, Sabine. Wow, that is not an easy one, because the most important thing, yes, I think the most important thing is what you give to people with all your heart, with a good heart and a clear purpose to help those people. You get it back somehow, sooner or later. Often not right away, because people can sometimes be difficult, especially if they find themselves in a difficult situation. You try to help and they don't seem to be grateful. But one way or another, you receive what you give. Sometimes even after many years, I've had people coming back on our cruises and they said, you helped me so much so many years ago. Karma, somebody says. Thank you. Yes, it's karma. The next question, sorry, I missed that. What, are there any community-oriented tourism destinations also in Europe? Yes. There are many. You can find them online. So I would say not as much as in overseas, but there are also community-oriented tourism destinations in Europe, and I'm sure there are more and more, because more and more people want to go on a bicycle tour and they want to connect with local communities. So I would say if you look for bicycle tours, you find it. Next question. Would you change something in these 40 years, some mistake in your work? Thank you. That is a good question. Of course, I do regret certain things. Sometimes I wasn't there enough for people, or I always remember one lady who was complaining bitterly about the noise on the ship. There was nothing I could do about it, but I do regret that after a while I tried to avoid her. I should not have done that, because if you avoid a complaining person, the complaint grows. If you approach the complainer and you listen and you listen again and you talk again, then most of the time you can come to a good conclusion. But yes, I do regret running away from complaints sometimes. Yes, we are aligned. What about safety? Good question. Safety, coming back to the bicycle tours, you need to be sure that people are as safe as they can be. You warn the people for certain, well, you never know, potholes in the road or difficult traffic situations. You ask them to kindly wear a helmet. You give a demonstration of how the bicycle works and how the brake works, how the brakes work. You give them a phone number which they can call if they are in trouble, and you have a car ready to pick them up. Safety on the ships, we always have a safety briefing, of course, and the safety briefings on the ships and also on the buses are very, very important, need to be taken seriously. No joking during the safety briefings, because it's important, of course. It's the most important thing of all. Were there any lawsuits when safety failed? That is a good question, Susanna. This might come from the fact that I told you I worked with American people mostly. Yes, we had lawsuits, but we were always covered because we knew we were doing the right thing. Of course, before we started sailing on the first cruise, everything was looked into by lawyers from America that we hired to make sure we did the right thing in our communication. So there have been lawsuits, but as far as I know, they were all lost by the passengers that started the lawsuits. Question from Natalie. Have you experienced any weird situations like kidnapping, threats, and similar? I have experienced weird situations, but not like kidnapping or threats, not that I can remember, no. But one story that's in my book, we lost a passenger on a day trip to Salzburg. We took a day trip from the ship, and in Salzburg we lost him and we could not find this man anymore. We knew he had dementia and his wife was there, but he must have taken a wrong turn. All of a sudden we couldn't find him. We alerted the police and the hospitals and all the taxi drivers. He could not be found. And Salzburg, as you may know, is enclosed by mountains. I thought he cannot be beyond the mountains. He must be found. What had he done? He was so confused, he had taken a taxi to Vienna, but the ship was in Linz. And in the middle of the night, this is a long story short, I got a phone call from the Vienna police. And they said, we have your lost passenger. There was already a national alert, so he knew that, I knew that all the police were looking for him. They found him in the middle of the night in a taxi in Vienna. That is the most remarkable story, the weirdest story that comes to my mind right now. What are the key challenges for sustainable tourism in your opinion? Well, the challenges are at the moment is to get to everybody involved in your mission. Let me give you an example. A year ago, I was training people in Myanmar. You know, at the moment there is a civil war in Myanmar, but that was just before this, the coup, before the military took over, when everything was still nice and quiet. I was training people in tourism in Myanmar online because it was already COVID-19. And those people said, can you please help us because we live on tourism and now there is no more tourism. What can we do? I said, okay, I can try to get you ready for future-proof tourism. So we'll work on that. I cannot bring you tourists right now, but let's work on future-proof tourism. So I told them about sustainability. And they said, yes, you are right, but that is all nice for your countries in Europe. But in Myanmar, we just need to survive. We need to make a living. So we need to continue the way we always did. And we can't focus now on things like plastic, not using plastic bottles. And I said, but you have to, because otherwise you won't get any more tourists. They want sustainable tourism. And then only half a year later, they said, we understand you are right. So now they hope to be open to tourism again in the future, which is not very likely for the moment. But they are now working on sustainability. They want to produce more of all the things that you need for sustainable tourism. So you need to get everyone involved in your mission. That is, I think, the key challenge. On a larger scale, low emission ships and aircrafts. These are still big challenges that are being worked on. Anything else? I love your questions. COVID-19 didn't bring only negative impact. Very true. For myself, I had time to write my book, but on a larger scale, yes, people became aware everything that was already in the pipeline as for sustainable and responsible tourism came out more quickly. Do you think that Slovenia has a lot of potential for sustainable tourism? Yes. In Slovenia, you can organize beautiful bicycle tours, and there is so much nature. What you could even do, it just comes to my mind spontaneously now. In Africa, I have been on bush walks where we learned how to survive in the bush. You could do the same in Slovenia. Take the people on a walk in the forest, and you try to learn from history how people would survive in the past, and teach the same to your tourists. They will love it. And there is the next question. Was language ever a major barrier in your efforts with PUM or in your career in general? How did you communicate with people who did not speak English or Dutch? Did you ever use interpreters, or did you find that even in poor countries in Africa or Myanmar that you mentioned, most local people you had contact with had a good knowledge of English? That's also a good question. On my missions, so far, people spoke enough English. That is, there were always some people in the team that spoke pretty good English, and they would help the others, which increased our bonding, because if people could not understand me and I could not understand them, we would try with hands and feet and with the help of their colleagues. And we would often laugh so much because at first we would misunderstand, and then all of a sudden we said, oh, this is what you mean. And that was extra bonding. If you want to make an effort, you do succeed in communicating. Hiking tours, yes, Sabina, hiking tours in Slovenia, the best. And then you teach people how to survive on a hike when there is no city or town nearby. There are, like the Boy Scouts, they learn how to survive on their own. This would be a very popular thing. I think Slovenia has a lot of potential. And now that we can only travel in Europe, I think there are good chances for Slovenia to get more European tourists. A question from Susanna. I believe you are still looking for new business partners. How do you approach them, or do they find you? I mean, you are famous for your work. Once you have a very clear mission, people come to you. Before you have built a certain name and reputation, you need to work on that through social media. So in your PR, you show your mission to the world with examples, and then people will pick up on it. Instagram is very strong in that field. Sabina, we should learn how to survive in school as a necessary subject. Yes. Yeah, well, that's true. Survival training. It's a hot topic. People like that because we have all the luxury today. We don't need to survive anymore. But people like to go back to the old days sometimes, not all the time, to learn how people survived in the past, and also how they found edible plants to cure diseases. What advice would you give to your younger self? That is a beautiful question. To my younger self, yeah, of course, I wish I were 18 and have the knowledge of 40 years later. I would, when you look back, you always, only then do you see the general line in your life. But yes, we all wish that, Natalie says. Um, I, I, I don't know. Maybe I should not have stayed for 22 years on the bus tours. That was a bit too long. I should have explored different directions, which I did later on, the ships and PUM and wedding planning. But 22 years on the bus, I had a feeling I no longer belonged there, but I didn't know where to go. So to my younger self, I would say, as soon as you have that feeling that you don't really belong there anymore, then make an active effort to find something else that really suits you. Wonderful questions. We could go on for hours like this. We should be braver, somebody says. Well, we all want to be brave, but I think we are all as brave as we can be at a certain moment. And then later on, you grow a little bit braver. Then, Susanna, I missed the beginning of your presentation. Sorry. You have been working with Natalie, haven't you? How did you connect? Well, we connected through an interview in Natalie's magazine. And I was very, very happy to get a place in her beautiful magazine. Maybe Natalie can send you the interview via email, I don't know. Thank you for the journey.